And so I've been more and more thinking of this as a definition of what constitutes religious truth. So I think we have to look at the world. I think the structure we look at the world through has to be a structure of ethics. I think it has to be. And this is interesting because I would say I came to that conclusion not as a religious thinker, but as a scientific thinker. I couldn't see any other solution to the problem of perception other than the imposition of a structure of value. And so what do I mean by that? Well, I made some allusion to it, but it's even as simple as this. You have to prioritize your perceptions. So for example, when you use your eyes, and I mean technically, you're pointing your eyes at something all the time, and the very central part of your vision is extremely expensive. It takes a lot of neurological territory for you to see clearly. And so you can only see a very small part of the total visual field clearly, and you move it around all the time. And where you move it to is where you want to look. Well, where do you want to look? Well, you look where you think it's important to look. So I'll say that again. You look where you think it's important to look. And that means that, well, a hierarchy of importance is no different than a hierarchy of value. They're the same thing. A hierarchy of priority is the same as a hierarchy of value. And a hierarchy of priority and a hierarchy of value and an ethic are all the same thing, right? Because you're going to look at what you believe to be of cardinal importance. Otherwise you look, well, if you're talking to someone and you look at their feet, that's not going to be going very well, right? First of all, they're not going to be very impressed with you because they actually want you to look at their eyes. And that's because we communicate value with our eyes. And we do that directly. Our eyes have even evolved to do that. Our eyes have whites around the iris so that you can see where people point them. Because it's that important to know what people think is important. We see the world through a structure of value. And I think that a huge part of that structure of value is actually derived from the entire set of texts and their interrelationship that have the biblical corpus at their base. And so it seems to me that I think you can make a pretty damn strong case, maybe on scientific grounds, that you can't see the world except through the lens of the Bible. Like literally, you actually can't see it. Now, if it's not the Bible, it might be some other corpus of texts, but it might be. It isn't. And if it was, well, is it going to be a corpus of texts that we share? Because if it isn't, then we can't share our perceptions and our values, and if we can't share those, then we fight. Those are the options, right? We either stabilize our hierarchies of value in some way that we agree upon mutually, or we fight. Or we're unbelievably chaotic and confused, and that'll just produce fighting in any case. And so we have this structure of texts built from the bottom up. It's predicated on the biblical narratives, and the texts exist in relationship to those underlying narratives and derive a fair bit of their meaning from the meaning of the underlying narratives, and vice versa, you know. And so then is it possible that biblical truth is the sort of truth that is the precondition for truth? Right? Because you think, well, it's religious people make the claim, people of the Bible make the claim, the Bible is true. Well, there's all sorts of different kinds of truth. That's an interesting claim, but it's not very elaborated. It's insufficient. And you know, often what happens to Christians when they debate skilled atheists like Richard Dawkins is they treat the Bible like it's a scientific theory, and Dawkins just mops the floor with them because it's actually not a scientific theory compared to scientific theories. And so as soon as you go there, well, it's like a scientific theory. It's like, no, it's not. It's not. And so does that mean it's not true? Well, it means that if the only thing you think is true is a scientific theory, but I don't think that you can practice science except within an ethical framework that's not in itself science. And so it's possible that there is a deeper truth than the scientific truth, which is the ethic that has to be there a priori before you can even begin to do science. And I did talk to Richard Dawkins about that a little bit, you know, because he's someone who appears to believe that the truth will set you free, which is what scientists believe, because otherwise why would they pursue the truth, right? For malevolent reasons? Well, hopefully not. They believe the truth is redeeming, but that isn't a scientific assumption. That's a religious assumption. And so is it possible that you can't practice as an honest scientist without making the religious assumption that the truth will set you free? It's certainly possible. I mean, it's impossible to undertake the scientific enterprise in any real sense and discover anything that's truly factual, let's say, without abiding by the truth in an extraordinarily rigorous manner. You just don't get anywhere. Certainly what you do won't be reproducible. And so, I know maybe I'll wrap up with this. Maybe I can make this a bit clearer. So, I spent a lot of time studying cybernetic models of perception. And so those were models of perception that were informed by artificial intelligence theorizing, stretching all the way back to a man named Norbert Wiener, who established the field of cybernetics. And he basically claimed that you organize your perceptions in relationship to a goal. So, for example, if I want to walk across the stage, then I'll specify my endpoint, and I'll see that in high resolution. And then I specify the pathway, and that the observation of that untrammeled pathway produces positive emotion, because positive emotion is an index of an untrammeled pathway towards a valued goal, which is also something that's very interesting to know, because it suggests that there's no positive emotion without a goal. It also suggests that the more noble the goal, the more complete and elevated the positive emotion. And that could be true. That could be true, you know? And it's the case as well that when you organize your perceptions around a goal, that provides a container for your negative emotions. So if I want to walk across the stage because I think that getting to the other side is preferable to being here, so that's a hierarchy of value, that place is better than this place, then when I observe myself undertaking the actions that will get me to that place, that's comforting and provides security, because it shows that the structure that I'm using to organize my perceptions and to reduce the world to a manageability is sufficiently accurate so that I can implement it. And so we seem to inhabit those structures all the time. Whenever we're looking at the world, whenever we're interacting, we specify a goal, and so that's an ethical enterprise, and we organize our emotions within the specification of that goal, and then we produce hierarchies of goals. So, you know, you sit down in front of your computer so you can write a paper, and you write a paper so that you can finish an essay, and you finish an essay so that you can get a grade in a class, and get a grade in a class so that you can graduate with a degree, and you do that so that you can get a job, and you do that so that you can be, a good husband, a good wife, a good citizen, and you do that so you can be a good person. There's a hierarchy of ethic that permeates the entire enterprise, right from the microcosm up to the macrocosm, and I think that's something like the whole landscape of religious value, with the outermost container, so be a good person, let's say, that's the ultimate aim of the religious enterprise. That's something like the imitation of Christ in the most fundamental sense, and all the things that you do within that are a reflection of that, or you're confused and chaotic. And if everyone's doing that at the same time, then you have a society that's integrated and aiming up and capable of telling the truth. It's something like that. Does that seem reasonable? And so what's the proposition here? Well, I think when we describe these frameworks of perception, the name we give to the description of a framework of perception is a story. And I think the reason that we like stories so much is because we need to establish frameworks of perception in order to operate in the world and to allow ourselves to be integrated peacefully with other people. And so we're extraordinarily interested in anything that has a narrative basis. And the reason we're interested in that is because we're trying to build within ourselves and collectively the structure that enables us to perceive the world without undue confusion and chaos, and in a manner that provides some value to us and some sustainability. That's the goal overall. And that seems to me to be the goal of the entire religious enterprise. And so, is it possible that, well, I guess that's the claim I thought I'd elaborate out a little bit today is that the Bible is true in a very strange way. It's true in that it provides the basis for truth itself. And so it's like a meta-truth, right? Without it, there couldn't even be the possibility of truth. And so maybe that's the most true thing. The most true thing isn't some truth per se, it's that which provides the precondition for all judgments of truth. And it seems to me that I can't see any holes in that argument. And I can't see any holes in it from a scientific perspective either, because I think we do know well enough now as scientists that the problem of deriving ethical direction from the collection of facts is an intractable problem. There's too many facts. There's an infinite number of facts. They do not provide an unerring guide for action. They can't. There's too many of them. They have to be prioritized. And as soon as they are prioritized, well, then you're in the ethical domain. And then that begs the question, what's the valid ethical domain? And the postmodern answer is, well, there isn't one. It's all the expression of domination and power. And I think that's nonsense. I don't think that's a tenable solution. I think that we stumbled onto the proper answer in some sense in our religious enterprise, which is that we aim at what's highest, or we don't. We aim at what's highest jointly, or we're divided. We aim at what's highest, and that gives meaning to all the things we do that are subordinate parts of that. We aim at what's highest, and that's what collects us and gives us structure, all of that, singly and jointly. And that's all what we've been trying to communicate all these centuries as we've been trying to communicate the whole religious corpus, generation after generation, and to sort this out and to straighten it out and to try to understand it. And I think that's where we're at now, maybe a little bit more conscious of what this all means, and maybe a little bit more capable of being more certain as people of the book that the faith we have in the textual corpus that we inhabit is, we just haven't done better than that. And we strive to flesh it out, we strive to understand it, but fundamentally, it seems to be true in that fundamental sense that I just described, which is not merely true, but the precondition for truth itself. And so that's what I thought I would talk to you about tonight. So.